name's Taylor. I'm a manager of client success at Indeed, as Katie had said. And one of my passion projects for my past about 5 years while I've been at Indeed has been the Job Squad program. So I get to go around to great nonprofits and different places, colleges, universities, and help all of you as job seekers use Indeed to find your next job and kind of give you some insider tips and tricks on the best ways in which you can help to optimize your job search and stand out. First thing you're going to need is an account. It's one thing if you browse our site, if you go to apply for any sorts of jobs, the first thing we're going to ask you to do is have an account. The second thing that's going to happen after you create an account is we're going to ask you to upload a resume. I personally would recommend just building a new resume and copying and pasting the sections from your Word doc or your PDF or wherever you've saved your own resume content. I think it's more helpful that way. It allows you to have a lot more control over, how bulleted lists show up, any sort of numbered get content, anything along those. Be applying for jobs on Indeed. There's also an option to have your resume public, similar to what you think of it with your LinkedIn profile, for people to search you based on your experience or your education. And what this allows employers to do is verified employers who have access to our resume database can actually reach out and say, hey, we have an opportunity that may align with your current skill set. So if you have no current work history, focus on your education and your volunteership. Work on highlighting the different skills you've acquired either through the start of your college diploma, your undergraduate degree. Talk about courses you've taken throughout high school. Work on transferable skills if you did any co-ops, if you had any ability to, volunteer for like summer jobs or for, volunteering in a hospital or whatever it might be. Use those opportunities to expand on your skill sets and pick out those transferable skills that are you gained from those, different learning opportunities and use that in a way that it matches up with perhaps some other jobs that you're looking to apply for. So if you're looking to get into customer service as an example, if you have some volunteer experience, then you can talk about some of the duties that you had in that volunteer job and how they relate to a customer service perspective. You can talk about, skills when it comes to, math, accounting skills, whatever it might be that you think is transferable to that new role. Your ability to be, eloquently write emails because of, your high marks in English or whatever it might be. There's a lot of transferable things that you can kind of pull out from the different coursework you've completed, even if you get to land your first job. And so this is a heat map of essentially where our HR person or recruiter's eyes land when they're skimming a resume. So one of the couple things that you'll notice is that they don't spend a lot of time typically going over all the different content in a resume. It's generally a very quick 30-second glance over the one page of your resume, and then they decide if they're going to give you a call back or not. Your volunteer experience or your coursework or whatever it might be, stick with the most relevant and newest experience first near the top. And then if you do have work experience, focus on the job title, the time that you spent there. If you had short stints, always denote why. Was it a contract position? Was it a summer position that you worked over the summer for school? You had a part-time job during first year, whatever it might be. Just make sure to kind of highlight any of the reasons why you might have had shorter tenures at previous roles. First and last name, of course. Put your email address. Put a phone number. No need to include your address on a resume ever. There's no need for employers to have that sort of information until you're assigning a job offer and you're filling out all the forms for HR. And same thing, if your phone number doesn't exactly maybe line up, maybe you move for school or something like that, you could put a line in there in your brief synopsis about, where you're attending school or highlight the fact that your education, put that at the top of your resume. I always say be as detailed as possible with the good things. And then for everything else that someone could, potentially hold against you, kind of try and keep back as much of that information as you possibly can. Something else you might run into along the way is assessments. So sometimes after you actually are completing a job application, you may get an assessment that comes through, and this assessment will say, it's for social media, it could be for marketing skills, could be an English proficiency test, any number of different things for the job that you're have applied to. They're generally pretty short. anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes long. You can do them on a phone or a tablet, but I would recommend completing them on a computer in like a quiet place, pretend it's like a mini exam, and just give yourself the best opportunity to score well on these particular assessments, because you can't retake them as many times as you'd like. Once you've completed the assessment, that grade is sent off to the employer, and then if any other employer were to ask for that particular assessment, we will also reuse that same score for any future applies. So with that being said, you can retake the assessments after 6 months if you did not like your score. However, if you scored really poorly and you feel like it's not a good reflection of your actual skills or abilities in a particular setting, I'll give you a little tip. You can actually reach out to our like customer success team or our mainline team, essentially, for job seeker support, and they will be able to kind of walk you through resetting it one time for your job seeker account. Something else I highly recommend spending some time going through is our career advice section. So if you go to indeed.com/career-advice, you'll find a bunch of great articles. All of these articles have everything from, the new graduate's guide to job search, how to find jobs that suit you well, the essential job search guide. There's tips and tricks for, getting your first gig job, which might be something for a lot of you that may end up being a first role, because it's flexible, can work with different time frames. You can do it in between classes, and you can kind of pick and choose when you want to work. And we offer these guides. They're relatively short. They're all between 5 to 10 minutes of reading, so nothing that's going to be very intensive. They're going to give you some additional insight and additional pathways into your actual job search journey, and hopefully open up your eyes to some new avenues that you might not have considered before. So for a lot of companies on Indeed, when you're searching and you're actually in the job search results, you'll see frequently that sometimes the company name is hyperlinked and you can click on it. So employers are able to add content to their company pages. They can upload photos, they can upload a Why Join Us section that talks about their corporate culture, links to their Twitter, their Facebook, their Instagrams, just different ways in which you can connect with them and find out more information about their online presence, consolidated all in one easy to find place. You don't have to spend time Googling them and going through all of that data consistently. The one thing employers can't necessarily control is their reviews page. We do not remove reviews for employers just because they don't like them. We believe in transparency. So unless they're violating some sort of code of conduct, they're saying something that's maybe overtly like racist or something that goes against the law or something like that, those are the only times we'll be able to remove a review or redact part of it. However, if someone's just saying, hey, I really didn't like working here, management was terrible, I had all these problems, XYZ, we're going to leave that up, because we believe in transparency for all of you as job seekers, and you should be able to know and get an honest opinion of the kind of places that you're applying to help you decide if that might be a great place for you to work. Someone leaving a review saying this was a terrible place to work with no supporting details is not really that helpful. Someone who leaves a review that's well balanced, that tells you about the good, the bad, and kind of goes into detail about their experience there, is actually worth your time and gives you some true insight into what it's like there at that company. I highly recommend, especially if you're transit bound or if you have certain job requirements, that you actually use the bar that's up top for job category and the location. So really quickly, you can get jobs that might take you an hour to commute to. And if you don't want to be stuck on transit for that period of time, it might not be the best opportunity. So you can kind of pare it down to, only in or within 2 kilometers of. So I recommend that as my first thing that I always tell people to change, because it can make a really big difference in your quality of life, especially if you're looking for like your first job. Chances are it's probably going to be minimum wage-ish. So you're probably not going to want to spend a ton of time or a ton of money commuting to that particular job. You want something that's close and convenient for you. So keep that in mind. Also, you can choose part-time, full-time contracts to kind of weed out different positions as well. And that I always find really helpful. The one thing that I will kind of caution everyone on is salary. The majority of employers now who post jobs directly with us, over 60%, are including salaries. However, it's not mandatory. So if you search by salary, and if you're really dead set on being within a certain pay range, that's okay, but don't take that as the be all end all in your search. You might be missing out on jobs that are paying within the salary range you want, like if you're looking at things above minimum wage, that just haven't kind of volunteered to put their salary data on Indeed at this time. And also click on the advanced search button and you can fill out any of these forms. So you might be looking for, customer service. You might be looking for, sales type roles. You also might want to exclude certain words that could come with, maybe you really don't want a sales job. You can remove sales from it. Some roles have overlap. As an example, there's a huge difference between being a laboratory technician and being an auto body technician and being a nail technician, yet they all have the word technician in it. So if you're looking to be an auto body tech, you might want to exclude nail or lab from your search results to filter out those kind of jobs, especially maybe if you're in an area that's hiring for a lot of those people right now. What's nice about this is once you've pared down your search, you put on those filters, you're starting to get results that are more aligned with what you're looking for. You can sign up with job alerts. If you're already signed into your Indeed account, you won't need to enter your email address. You can just click the activate button. If you aren't signed in, you can just put in your email. And what this will do is we'll send you either daily or weekly, depending on how many new jobs pop up in your particular location, updates on jobs that meet this exact search criteria. If you have our app and you're signed into it as well, you'll get push notifications when new jobs are there. So you can be one of the first applicants to apply for them. It just kind of helps keep you on top if you're still looking for future employment. So we also talked about easy apply. You'll also see it there. Sometimes it's going to be denoted, especially on the mobile view. You'll see a little paper airplane just letting you know that it's moving really quickly. Sometimes you'll see tags on jobs too that might say urgently hiring, or there's been, they're hiring multiple candidates, or there's many applicants who are there. If you see something like many applicants, or they're hiring for multiples of a position, don't be scared off from those particular roles. Don't think just because a lot of other people have applied that you shouldn't apply because there's too much competition. You never know. Always give it, if you think you're qualified for that role or you think it's a good fit for you, always feel free, shoot your shot, go in and apply for it. It only takes a couple seconds with easy apply. That's one of the reasons why we've made it so streamlined and so quick. It's always good to get your name kind of thrown into the hat because you never know who's going to be able to call you back and what sort of connections you can make. So these are some tips I have for healthy application habits. It can be daunting sometimes applying for your first set of jobs. So take some time, understand the job descriptions, understand why you want to apply for the job, what transferable skills you have, ensure it's coming through on your resume. Answer all the application questions honestly and truthfully. I cannot kind of emphasize this enough. Sometimes you'll see screener questions on jobs and we'll say do you have a license, or do you have this particular degree or diploma? Chances are we all know that when someone's asking us a question like this, they probably want the answer to be yes. However, if the answer for you is no, don't lie. Because two things happen. I always say that employers are looking for this thing called a purple squirrel. Typically, that's something that doesn't exist. Someone who has all the qualifications and the exact skill set they really want for that job. Someone who has the perfect 3 to 5 years of experience, the right degree, the right qualifications, certifications, whatever it might be for that particular role. And then when they kind of turn on all those filters, they might not get all the kind of applicants they want, and they slowly start to remove those filters. So maybe they say, I don't really care if you know how to use Salesforce. We can teach you that. But what happens is if you lied on that question and they find out through the interview process that the only reason you got into that interview process was because they had all those boxes checked off and they thought you were that purple squirrel or unicorn candidate, and they find out that you lied or fibbed or however you want to kind of phrase it, they'll no longer trust you. And that will also probably kind of remove your chances of ever being employed with that employer again in the future. So don't kind of shoot yourself in the foot. Be honest. You never know. They might open it up later on and remove some of those qualifications. Then your resume might come through those filters. So always keep that in mind. Honesty is always the best policy, and figure out ways in which you can kind of move forward from that. And just proofread everything. Nothing turns off recruiters more so than spelling errors or simple mistakes and things like that. Don't get flustered when you're trying to apply, but take some time to ensure that it's been proofread. Have your friend read over it, have a counselor read over it, whatever it might be. There's lots of resources available. Use things like Grammarly just to ensure that everything is flowing the way you want and you're not missing something, because there's nothing more embarrassing than having your resume discarded because you have a bunch of typos in it. The other thing that I was mentioning with your account, if you go to indeed.com/myjobs and you're signed in, you can actually see all of the roles that you've saved. So if you favorited any sort of roles, if you want to come back and maybe make some tweaks to your resume or anything like that before applying. And you can also see visited and archived. Visited is great because maybe you looked at something while you were signed in on your phone, and then you get home and you're like, I wanted to make a change to my resume before I applied to that, or update something, or talk about a particular skill set that I have that makes me a good candidate for this role. And now you can't remember what company it was with, or you forget the job title, or you forget a detail. If you go under visited, you can actually see all the jobs you clicked on and that you read the job description for. So it can be a really quick way for you to go back, just like having your internet browser history allows us to kind of help you keep track of all of those roles. And you can also see where you are in the application process for a lot of them, as well as employers move you through different stages. So it can be a great way to actually keep track of your whole application process start to finish. Also remember that you have to put yourself first, and you need to ensure that you're doing the right things for you. So if you find you're becoming frustrated, take a break, watch a show, come back to it later. Don't ever feel that you are obligated to, apply for X amount of roles a day, or, go through and ensure you've applied to everything that's available. That's, entry level in your area. Just take some time for you. On that note as well, once you've applied to jobs, double check a couple things. Make sure your voicemail is set up correctly on your phone and that it's professional and it's not something funny. Also, don't pick up calls from numbers that you don't know, because you could be headed to class, you could be getting groceries, and it might be a recruiter calling you and asking. And chances are that recruiter's going to say, oh no, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. We can have this conversation now. Like, I don't mind. There's no background noise or that you're on transit, but that's not putting you in the right mindset to answer their questions and schedule time to come in for an interview or have a pre-phone screen interview right then and there. You also probably have applied for 20, 30 plus jobs, and you might not even know what employer is calling you, and they're going to expect you to know, who it is, maybe some things about the company or why you want to work there, and you might not have that information offhand. So let them leave a voicemail. You can look up, where you applied, pull up the job description, read it through, and then give them a call back on your terms, and then schedule that interview or that next section when you have, some time where it's quiet and you're able to go through that process, because you don't want to be kind of caught off guard and be frazzled trying to answer questions, with a basket full of groceries, and you have someone on the phone quizzing you about things that are on your resume that you may or may not remember. So I always like to give out that piece of advice as well. And also check out our resources. Again, we have at indeed.com/interviewing-advice. We have a bunch of great articles that have interview questions for different topics, whether it be something more specialized like nursing, other things about, what to wear to a job interview, how to handle virtual job interviews, just different tips and tricks. So we have a lot of additional resources available for all of you as well that can be really helpful. These are some really great examples of questions that you should kind of have premeditated answers to, so they don't catch you off guard. If you have something, if you've already worked previously and someone asks you, I always love this question, why are you leaving your current job? Or tell me about your experience at your current job. You could be leaving for any number of reasons. Never, ever, ever talk poorly about your current or previous employers. They might have been the worst people you've ever worked for, and you might despise them, but just figure out a way to have a constructive and positive conversation around that. And if they're not giving you the opportunity for growth, or you don't see eye to eye with your manager, figure out a way to phrase that in a positive light. I'm looking for growth opportunities. They're not, right now the schedules aren't lining up for what I need with my class schedule, whatever it might be. Figure out a way to phrase it nicely, and don't put other people down in job interviews. That's a huge red flag, and it happens more often than you think. If you've already accepted a job offer and then someone else calls you and is offering you an interview, I recommend always taking the interview, because it's okay to decline it politely after the fact, even if you like another job better, but it gives you a really great interview experience. And getting that interview experience is really rare, and you're not constantly being interviewed. So it's a really great way to work on a skill set that otherwise is very difficult to develop in person. So that's my other little tidbit of advice. I always tell people to try and channel something that makes you happy, or think about the content of what you're going to be talking about. It really depends on an individual level about how you handle stress and how you handle these sorts of situations. But I always recommend that do something that relaxes you. That means thinking about something else. If that means reading over your notes last minute, think about how you handle exams, I would say, and figure out what you do in those situations to help calm yourself down and focus. If that's deep breaths, if that's focusing on, something that's a different different topic to make you laugh, like, looking through memes, whatever it might be. Just take that time for you to be able to really be able to center yourself and go into that interview knowing that you have all of the data, it's there, yourself, they're only asking you questions about you, and that, it's up to you just to kind of showcase that, and try not to put as much pressure on yourself. It's going to be more like entry level type roles, but you can kind of decide what industry you want to go into. Maybe there's something that really you like or you see a career path in. For a lot of people, their first jobs end up being in retail or like quick service. If it's like a Tim Hortons or like a pizza type job. Other people, their first job is going to be working in a mall to some capacity. So figure out which one you're more passionate about and figure out a way in which you can align yourself with that skill set, and maybe you see an opportunity to continue to grow. Maybe eventually, like, your first job typically probably maybe not be at a Starbucks, but it might be at a Tim Hortons. And if eventually you want to work at Starbucks because perhaps you really like their benefits or some of their education reimbursement that they offer, maybe Tim Hortons is the right way to go versus starting off at like a retail store, just because you'll have more experience that's kind of closely aligned with that. So always try and plan at least one step in advance for yourself and see where you can pull those transferable skills out of. And that should kind of help you to get some more alignment. Really focus on volunteer experience, co-op experience, any sort of accolades you've won throughout school, all of those sorts of things. Build those up and talk about ways in which those skills are transferable. So I would focus on, if it's a customer service type job you're trying to go for, focus on your organizational abilities, your multitasking abilities, your it might be like math skills, English language skills, whatever it might be that you want to kind of prioritize and that lines up with that job description. Figure out ways in which to pull that forward. But typically I find leading with a volunteer experience just generally the best way to show those job assets. Having at least 2 or 3 questions. It could be questions around, what's a typical day like in this role? What skills and attributes do you see that other, successful candidates have to do well in this role? And, maybe what do you expect to see from me in the first, 30, 60, 90 days? Just think about kind of questions that will make the employer think and also show that you're engaged in a particular interview process as well. So if anything came up in the interview you want additional clarification about, you went on a tangent about something, ask a question related to that because it shows common interest and that you were actively engaged throughout the interview as well. Service, it could be entry level, just doing basic keyword searches and then kind of dig through those particular opportunities to find ones that you have like are available to you in your current location, and then from there kind of look at what those job descriptions all have in common and figure out what your common skills are and how you can tie that back into your volunteer experience and into your classroom experience, whatever it might be, so it best highlights that you're a good candidate for that particular role. And sometimes also applying online, like apply through Indeed, and then if it's something that's local, especially for smaller businesses, feel free to stop by. Say, hey, I already applied online. I want to drop off a copy of my resume. If you're new, feel free to flat out tell them I'm looking for my first job. I have XYZ experience. These are like I'm flexible with hours, whatever it might be, because sometimes just that little extra bit of initiative, especially for your first job, can go a long way. Cover letters typically they're a little bit old-fashioned, I would say. Not every employer wants a cover letter. Typically, from my own experience, I'll tell you that employers who want cover letters will tell you they want a cover letter, and they will also generally tell you what they want to include in it. I don't think it's a bad idea to have a generic cover letter, something, to whom it may concern. Thank you for taking the time to read over my resume. I look forward to connecting with you further about this opportunity, or just something, short, sweet, to the point. That you can attach to pretty much everything you apply for. But the days of having long, wordy cover letters that you spend 20, 30 minutes crafting, looking up information about an employer, especially for like entry-level type roles, very unnecessary, and they're not even really going to be read, I would say 98% of the time. And for the kind of roles that really want them, they might be roles that you're applying for that are like maybe on your university or college campus that want to get to know you as a person, roles in education. Those kind of roles really tend to want to dig into the person a little bit deeper and not just what's on their resume. And those might require a cover letter, but they'll typically state that. But for a typical transactional role, that's something that's really not utilized heavily anymore. All that's consistent, I would say it's less so about the total number of hours, and employers are really going to look at time frame. So if it's something you did consistently over the course of a summer or over the course of a semester, whatever it might be, you can put that in there. Even if you're only spending 1 hour a week there, but you've been doing it for a year or you've been doing it for 6 months or whatever it might be, consistency is key because essentially what they're looking for is that you have that the ability to come back, stay engaged in that particular program, and also apply those skills, and that they want you to still continue to come back. It's kind of like the pre-employment like checklist sort of you can kind of pull out of the volunteer opportunities. And anything you have that's long-standing, like if you have something that maybe you're a lifeguard every single summer for the past couple years or something like that, that's a really great something to put on the resume because it shows continuity.